So welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are recording this session, so if you want to keep your cameras off, please feel free to do it. If you can also keep yourself on mute, that would be really appreciated. But feel free to unmute yourself if you want to ask any questions or if you have any comments. So we will be going through this round 8 grant application today. So I'm myself, Maha Abhishek. I am the Communities and Grants Officer at Digital Xtra Fund, and I'm joined by Kraig Brown, who is the Partnerships and Development Manager. So Kraig will be going through the application, going through question by question, and also talking about the evaluation and the application process. We are also joined by Fiona Lindsay from Hillside School. Thank you so much, Fiona, for joining us. Hillside is one of our grant recipients from this year. So Fiona is here to share the experiences which she had as part of being an applicant of Digital Xtra, but also as she's delivering these initiatives at Hillside School. So I will pass over to Kraig and I'll let him do all the talking now.
Brilliant. Thank you, Mahan. If you can take over the lobby duties for me, it'd be greatly appreciated. So thank you all very much for joining us here today. It's a exciting but slightly stressful time of year for Maha and I as we get things up and running. But I would say at this point, the excitement is more than the stress. So that's really, really good. The Digital Xtra Fund Grant Awards have been running now. This is our 8th round. The first 2 were funded and managed by Skills Development Scotland, but since then we've been an independent charity and we've raised all the funding ourselves and ran the grant awards process ourselves. So I'd like to think that we know what we're doing by now, and that's why we're delivering these sessions online. We're also going to be delivering some in-person sessions this year as well. So keep an eye on our website for those. I'm going to assume that most people know what Digital Xtra Fund is, but just in case, I'll do a very, very quick recap. As I say, we're an independent Scottish charity who works with industry and government to run an annual grant awards process via application, which is what we're going to discuss today, to determine and support extracurricular activities across Scotland. There's some criteria which we'll get into, but basically any sort of extracurricular activity that engages young people aged 16 and under in the area of digital technologies. And what I might mean by that is slightly more advanced skills such as coding, games design, cyber skills, data science, more so than the digital literacy side, although that's important. Activities that would promote digital literacy or digital media, that's not the types of activities that you can apply for. So make sure that you read the guidelines and the criteria and what we do support and what we don't support before you go through all the effort of completing the application. What I'd like to do today, and it does take a little bit of time, so I'm going to crack on, is I actually have a fake application here. When I say fake, it is the actual online application, but I filled it in with fake data and fake information and frankly, bad answers. But I'm just going to go through it online live with you. And I'm going to sort of highlight some of the key points that maybe you might want to think about or be aware of as you're going through it. Also, talk a little bit about the evaluation process so that you understand how the successful grant applicants are determined, and then hopefully at the end we should have some time for questions. So I'm going to crack on. There's a couple points along the way where Fiona's going to jump in as well, and she's going to give her thoughts on how she delivered her application last year. As Maha said, it was successful, and if you look on our Twitter, you'll see there's lots of retweeting from Hillside School because they've had some fantastic activities this year and some great engagement. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen. Here we are. So hopefully this is familiar to you. This is our website, and I've got 2 screens here, so this is why you'll see I'm looking in both directions. So apologies if I'm not always looking at the camera. There's a little apply tab up here, and you can click on that. And then there's some chat about basically what I just said to you. And then if you click on the button at the bottom that says click here to find out more, it will take you to a screen with some more information. I should probably just click on that, to be honest with you. So some more information specific to this year's grant awards and how to apply, when are our webinars, and our in-person sessions, which we hope to have confirmed this week. And then some other useful resources, which I encourage you to check out. We have our previous impact reports, which you may or may not be as interested in how many young people we engaged in previous years, but there's some great case studies in there. We've got the midpoint evaluation form and final evaluation form from last year. Now, it might change slightly year on year, but there is a question about evaluation. And as part of the grant awards process, we do need feedback throughout the year in order to ensure the payments can go through. There's some good resources there on engaging girls in tech. And we're going to be announcing a webinar about that shortly as well on the 21st of February. But here's where the actual application process starts. So we've got the guidelines, which, as I mentioned, I would definitely encourage you to read. And then you have an offline Word document, which is the grant application form. My background is actually fundraising before I came into my current role of grant management. And I always loved it when this was available because it allows you to plan ahead for your application. So I would definitely use that. And also, I would actually complete this offline and then copy the answers into your online application. Because if something goes bad, like the internet goes out or the power goes out, you could potentially lose your application. But if you have this, then you're not too stressed about it. Then you've also got a sample project plan and a sample budget, which is new for this year. But where possible, we do ask you to complete the online form. If you can't, there is some chat above about how you can fill out the Word document and email it into us. But where possible, we do ask you to use the online application because it frankly makes our lives a lot easier. If you click on this, it then opens this tab here, which is the beginning of the actual application. And so the first page is an eligibility check. So you put in the main applicant organization, which could be your school, could be a business. The only thing that, and again, this is in the guidelines, but the only thing that we don't support basically are sole traders or people who aren't registered as a company or registered as a charity. So, you want to make sure you fall into that criteria. Actually, it says it right here, so you can read that there. Is the proposed activity extracurricular? Pretty much anything that's not part of the core curriculum, as in delivered by a teacher during school time, during set lessons, would be considered extracurricular. But again, double check that. Does it meet the fund's core objective, which we can touch on later because there is actually a question about that. Will it be the primary audience of age 16 and under? Will it be delivered between the 1st of July and the 30th of June 2024? Now, for something like a code club, it might already be running, or it might, we would hope it would be sustainable and run after those dates. But what we are looking to do is fund an activity that is specifically between those dates, and that's the dates in which the engagement is measured as well. So basically, it's not a coincidence it runs during the academic year. So if you're running a code club during the academic year, for example, which a lot of our applicants do, then that would fit into that criteria. And will it be delivered entirely in Scotland? Now, if you are applying from out with Scotland, say down in England or Wales, that's not a problem, but the activity does need to be delivered entirely in Scotland. So I've already filled this out. Like I said, these will be blank when you're completing it, and you simply click next if you meet all those criteria. So the next page is pretty simple. It's just the details of who you are and what you're proposing. So there, I've just made up a name there: Extra Digital Tech Club, Digital Xtra Fund. We're not a registered company, but we are a registered charity. If you are neither, say a school, don't worry about it. But if you are one or either or both, please provide that information. I've listed myself as the primary contact with my job title, and I've put in a generic email address there. This is our contact details. This is our social media details. So again, if some of them are not relevant to you, don't worry about it, but we just like to have that information if possible, particularly if you're successful. It helps us amplify your successes. Now, if you're delivering this with an activity partner, you can complete this section. If you're not, then don't. I've obviously, Fiona's joining us on the call, so I am pretending that this fake activity will be delivered in partnership with Hillside School. If there are multiple schools or multiple organizations involved, there is a little plus symbol, and you can add as many as you like. I think it's actually up to 500, to be honest, but hopefully you don't need more than that. And if you've been a successful grant recipient in the past, we just ask you to provide a summary of your grant award previous grant award, and what it achieved. So we've obviously, I've just made this up again, but I'm pretending we were awarded a grant in 2019 to deliver a coding club in Glasgow. And I just gave a summary there of what we achieved. 120 young people covering certain skills such as blah, 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 blah. It's very, very quick summary, but just so that we have an idea, and so the evaluation panel have an idea of maybe what you've achieved in the past. So this is where we actually get into the sort of the meat of the application, if you will. So the first question is a project summary. I'm not going to get too much into this. I've just made this up. But really what I want you to, when I say not get into this, I'm not going to get into what I've typed here, but really what I want you to appreciate here is this is a summary of what the young people will be doing. It is not a summary of the school or the personnel. As you can see, we have that down below. It's not a summary of what has been achieved below previously. Again, that would be something you would want to maybe enter below. This is a good summary of what the young people will be doing. And I'm going to start here by telling you a little bit about the evaluation process. Last year, we had 94 applications, and we had an evaluation panel of 40 people. Each application was read by 3 panelists independently. And what they do is they score each question on a score rank of between 0 and 4, except for one question, and I'll talk about that later. But every other question is scored between 0 and 4. 0 is basically you've not answered the question, even if perhaps you put words in there, but they're not relevant, or perhaps have left it blank. That would be a 0. A 4 would be you've answered it perfectly, and the reader, the evaluator, has an excellent idea of what it is that you're trying to achieve. This is where you really want to paint the perfect summary of what the young people will be doing. So I've said up to 20 participants. It's an 8-week program. It will be delivered after school. They will be repeating the 8-week program over the course of the year. The topics, and there will be an opportunity to get into this a little bit more in detail later, but the topics covered will be you might have field trips, and I know Fiona, you've had a couple field trips already this year. You might want to mention here industry speakers. Again, this is where having the offline form can be helpful, because those are also topics that will be discussed later on in other questions. But mentioning them here and summarizing them here, because you really want to get off on the right foot with the evaluators, would be a good idea. And then question number 2 is your school organization summary. So why is your school well placed to deliver this activity? Have you had previous successes? Have you done a survey amongst your student body and they're saying they really want this type of activity? Are you already running an activity at your community club and they would like you would like to expand or evolve on that activity, in which case, you've already shown an appetite for it, but you're looking to be able to offer something new. Those are just suggestions, again, things that we've read in the past, but this is where you would say, as a school organization, you are well placed to deliver this activity. And we've tweaked the application a little bit this year. So if you've applied in the past, you might notice that when you're going through it. We used to have a whole question about personnel, but instead we sort of lumped it in as 2B here now. And this is where you would list the personnel who would be running it. So I've listed Maha will be leading on it. Even though I'm filling out the application, I'm not leading on it. That's fine. I probably should have maybe put myself down there and just said that I deal with the finances or whatever, but it will be Maha who will actually be leading on it. The other thing that's important is if you include an activity partner up above it or on the previous screen, you should mention them here so that it's clear to the reader what role that activity partner has in the activity. And again, maybe there's an opportunity for us to connect with them and amplify any social media maybe they put out later on. So this is where you would sort of list those people, and I use the word list specifically. It doesn't, not everything has to be in paragraph form. If anything, I would say list form in this particular question is better, and it might be better in some other questions as well. So once you complete question 2, you can move forward. And Maha, just a reminder, I can't see the screens very well. So if anyone has any questions, please let me know. So now we're going to get into the project plan. And I'm going to very briefly talk about what I've put here, but then I'm going to hand it over to Fiona to chat a little bit about how what she maybe did to get to this point. One of the things that we've done this year that's new is, and you'll see a link to it here, sample project plan. We have included a sample project plan, and this is actually a real project plan that was used by a teacher, not Fiona, but by a previous grant recipient. And they typed this up, and they use this as their list of what they wanted to put into the online form. Because when you're doing it online, it can all sort of start to run together and it's easy to get lost. Trust me, I mean, we run the grants program, and when I've gone through the online application, sometimes it happens to me. You forget what you put up above, or you forget what you put on a previous page. So having this to hand could be really, really useful. They color coded it. I mean, if you've met this particular teacher, you know she's very, very sort of proactive and organized. And they have, you know, industry engagement involved. They have training involved. They have evaluation involved. Again, these are all things that we have highlighted here: planning, including procurement, training, delivery, industry engagement, and evaluations. These are all elements that we would like to see included in this project plan. And you can see what I've done here is I have put something in July, but it's just planning, because I appreciate most people are on summer holidays at that point. I've put procurement. Please keep in mind, we still have schools that are struggling to get equipment from this year's grant awards, and we're in February now, and these kicked off last summer because procurement in certain councils is just dire, especially if you're trying to get something that's not on an approved list. So please be aware of that when you are creating your project plan, that procurement can sometimes be a bigger challenge. In fact, after I wrote this, I realized starting this, if this was my activity, starting this on the 6th of September would be very optimistic, in my opinion, but I put that in there just anyway because I was filling in dates. Planning, training, delivery. Now, what you'll see here, as I said in my summary, it was an 8-week session. That's a pretty standard thing that we see. We either usually see an 8-week session or a 6-week session repeated over and over again, or we see the same cohort of young people all year long. It's up to you how you want to do it. There's no right or wrong way. I've decided to go with an 8-week session. You can see here, I've just put session 1, screenless coding, session 2, block coding, robotics, guest speaker, session 5, build and test, present ideas. So maybe the young people will present ideas to each other that they've created. And then I've included pre-evaluation and post-evaluation. So that's a session. All I've literally done then is just copied and pasted this into the next. It's the exact same things, but with updated dates. So, you know, it's probably easier to do it this way, but it's up to you how you want to do it. And maybe Fiona, this might be a good time to jump into you, over to you, and you can just describe what process you went through and how you made the decisions you made to run the Code Club you've made.
Can I share my screen, Craig? Is that okay?
I've just stopped sharing mine, so I think you have the ability to share yours.
Okay.
Let me know if you can't.
Computer's a bit slow today, sorry. Okay, can you see presentation?
We can see we can see the full PowerPoint screen. So if you want to run the presentation, it should go full screen.
It's fine. Okay.
Perfect. Thank you.
Right. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Fiona from Hillside School, and I run a coding club, a lunchtime coding club for primary 6 and 7 pupils. It's been going for kind of 4 years now. And last year I saw on Twitter must have been about this time or maybe slightly later than this, about this Digital Xtra Fund. And I thought, right, I need to find out a little bit more about this. So I first of all did a bit of research and had a look around, looked at previous examples of things that happened, and I thought, well, this is something I think we could do from our coding club at Hillside. And basically since then it's grown arms and legs. So first of all, the aims that I was thinking about, first of all, for a coding club was for a few things. The main ones I've just put on the screen there for you, but also it was to include children that are PEV funded and to try and give them something to do outside their normal classroom routine, and it's something to get them involved in, to try and make them feel part of the school community more than anything else. And a big drive as well to try and get girls into coding and computing as well. So that was the first thing. And then I kind of broke it down into what would probably be focusing on, and the big thing were microbits, Scratch, robotics as well, trying to incorporate other partners, so global goals in conjunction with MEMDEC, which we have in Aberdeen for the Faber World as well, to try and create a game that was to do with sustainability, to use market research, investigate robotics, and also work in partnership with Aberdeen University Business School that I'd established a link with just the year before. So first of all, I kind of started, this is a wee bit of an example from my project plan, first of all, and then kind of things added to it and were kind of substituted. There was wee extra bits all added in as well too. And this is the very start of the year, and all these things have actually happened that has gone in there. And the one item, the business school training, we actually did that at the University Business School as well, and that was a fantastic, successful day out. The costing as well for the actual project. Or do you want me to speak about the costing just now, Craig, or will I leave that till later?
No, you crack on. We will come to it in the budget, but you absolutely,
right.
You crack on. You're on a roll. Okay.
So to begin with, my initial budget was about £664 or something, and then Craig and Maha came back and said that's not enough, you know, you can do more here. So I really recommend that you think about things, for example, buses to get your young people out of school, or there's whatever it is they're doing, their club, to get them to go somewhere to engage with the science centre or somewhere that is local to you, universities, workplaces, etc., because the price of buses now are really expensive. So that's something to consider if you're able to do that at all. In my case, I had to get supply teachers. Now, you wouldn't believe how much money it costs actually to cover for a supply teacher on paper for the day, not what the supply teacher gets paid, but what actually, you know, it costs. So that was a good bit of money as well for a couple of days out for me. Trying to think as well about storage of any equipment you're having. So think about boxes that you can have to keep equipment in so that it can be used repeatedly afterwards, so the project can be sustainable. Reusable batteries as well, a good shout as well, because you're much better for environment, and also it means that you're going to be sustaining the project as well, won't run out of things. One thing I hoped that you all will do as well is look out there first of all and see what's available, because Marty the robot is something that I only found out about not too long ago, just by chance. There was a presentation going on, I found out on Twitter, and that's one of the most wonderful robotic tools I've ever seen. And we've had a borrow of one. We've actually ordered one because our funding, we got things at a cheaper price, and which has meant there's money kind of left over going to be, and thankfully with just a couple of extra pounds the school has got to cover, we're able to get a Marty robot as well, and that is something that we're looking forward to getting as well. So look out there, you know, price things and see if you can get the best deal. Go to the robotics companies, go to it was Pimoroni, the company that I used for different things as well. Go back to them, say to them, is this the best deal you can get? So you can get value for money as well. A huge success with our club is these Meow Bits, because the young people are able to make games and actually use them as a games console, and it's something that's really excited them, and they're loving it. They're going round to school giving everyone a wee shot of their games. Look what I just created. So they feel like they've achieved something majorly as well. These are some of the things that we purchased as well, that were in our big focus at the moment is on robotics, following a trip to Aberdeen Science Centre and a robotics workshop there. Another thing is part of this I'd actually put down that we were going to get money towards paying for the workshops and everything. Since doing that, we actually managed to get funding from the actual Science Centre to cover 75% of our transport costs, and also to get free tickets to actually enter. So that has meant that one of the reasons as well, plus these items that we've ordered were cheaper because the company did a good deal with us as well. So shop around and see if you can get any other kind of funding as well that will help make things cheaper or free for you as well. I did a baseline assessment with my young people. I haven't created it into graphs yet, but I'm going to be doing that. Just some questions about their experience, first of all, their attitudes towards using different tools for coding, how they felt about things, and we're going to come back to that later on just to see if their attitudes change, and also their skills, obviously, as well, because that's a big thing there as well. Here are some of the experiences our young people at Hillside have had as part of the Digital Xtra funding. On the right, you'll see the robotics workshop they had, which was only just last Thursday at Aberdeen Science Centre. Great success using Lego. The children were working at their own pace in teams, problem solving, critical thinking. Maha was there and saw that for herself. Thank you for coming along, Maha. On the left, that's just what we were doing just the other day, because I've got the people that are going to be at Aberdeenshire's Technology Inset Day that's going to be next Wednesday, and 4 young people are going to be showcasing what happens digitally at Hillside. So they were putting onto microbits and some code so they can showcase this to the teachers and staff that are going to be at that centre, programming the robots and everything as well. So they've got some items with them to take there to show others. We also had a trip as following on from the Science Centre in the morning. We went to Nescol College in the afternoon, and one of the students there did a fantastic presentation explaining her journey for creating a game, which the children were totally inspired about, and also using the computer lab to have a go of Minecraft in education as well, using Python, which a lot of them had used for the very, very first time as well. On the right, you'll see there the children are working with their projects for their Sustainable Goals project as well, trying them out using either Scratch or Make Code Arcade as well. Aberdeen University, our big day out, was one of the most enjoyable and interesting for the pupils' days ever. Some of them did a presentation to the university, and then we had a challenge there to create an app for a sustainable app that we're going to be coming back to on our project plan later on, because other things are taking a priority just now, but the children know that this is something we're coming back to later. They met some students at the university to see what their take was of their university life, so they're getting an idea of what it's like for the future once they leave school, what opportunities are out there for coding and things as well. We got some feedback as well on the visit to see what they learned, what they'd like to find out more about as well. And robots was a big thing that they really thought about here. So actually, I created then some further ideas for carrying on in class, or our club at least, not class, what we're going to be doing here. And that's included there. We've kind of looked out for other opportunities along the way. So for example, last week there was a webinar from the National Farmers Union. We're doing about how robotics, farming and robotics are combined. And that was most enjoyable. All the pupils at our coding club saw that, and most of our 6 and 7 pupils watched it also too. So that was really good. So any opportunities out there to engage children, what's there in the real world, to know what's there for robotics and coding are great. We're in the process of organising some visitors to come either virtually or in real life. We've got Open Planet Software coming to us in March to talk about them. They've created the Just Press Rewind or Replay, something like that, app that they've done for Apple, and they've created other things. We've also got an ex-pupil from Portlethen that actually has created, with her boyfriend, a company, and they're based in Dundee, and they're going to be doing a virtual session with us as well about games design, because they have created, again, a game that actually is something that has actually been launched and is available out there to purchase too. So I think the links with industry and other partners are really something that involve the pupils even more, and they can see at the end of the day exactly what is out there. At the end of the day, an evaluation of the project will be something we'll be doing just to see what the impact has been on the young people as well, and we'll create graphs and things just to kind of showcase what's there. We're intending to have an open event for our families of the pupils that take part, and also just any other of the people that have been involved to come along, and the children will present exactly what they've learned in the process of the Digital Xtra funding project, and hopefully that will be something that they will enjoy doing and showcase to others. And that's towards the end of the summer term as well. And that's it, basically. And the one thing just to say, I'll just stop sharing my screen, is I think it's really important that things are sustainable. So what we've got afterwards, we'll be able to use the equipment and everything again. And it's not letting me stop my screen. Is that it? Yeah, stop sharing. There we go. So anything that you can have that will be sustainable again, that will engage the next session of learners, I think is really good as well, because then you're getting real value for money too. And involving the pupils, I think, in the learning process as well, if it's something you could do, which is not something that I did this last year, but if I was to do this again, I think that's something I would do it in partnership with them and actually see what they're wanting, which we've done along the way, and kind of taken their ideas on board and added things and tweaked things as well. But I think that would be something that's really worthwhile in your situations as well. Our recommendations are definitely complete the forms offline. First of all, keep copies of everything, check around what's available there, ask questions with people, check the criteria, see which partners or who you can involve to help support your project, and don't be afraid to ask anybody, basically, too.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Fiona. That is super, super helpful, and you covered a lot there, which we will come to as well. So I'll refer back to what Fiona has just said there a few times. So I'm going to start sharing my screen again. Thank you.
If anyone wants to ask questions or that in the chat, or contact me via Twitter, via the Hillside, or my own, I'll put my own Twitter handle in the chat. Please feel free to do so.
Brilliant. Thank you. So yeah, as I said, I just sort of copied and pasted here. You might want to do something that's the whole year long, and it might require a little bit more planning, but maybe that fits better for what you have in mind for your group, and that's absolutely fine as well. The one change we did this year is we just had a full list of deliverables last year, whereas now we've broken it down per month. But what that also means is if you say have nothing in a particular month, it is still required. So you just have to put a wee NA for that month, and it will let you progress. Otherwise, it will give you an error. And then there is a question here about your main risk. So and I've just sort of used one that is extremely common at the moment. Obviously, COVID was a serious issue last year. It's still an issue, but it was quite serious last year, less so this year. This year, it seems to be that procurement is the problem that we keep running into. So I put that there as the risk, and what I would do if I were you to try and alleviate that. But again, there's no right or wrong answer. It's up to what you think. If we go to the next screen, then that takes us to our budget, which is partly what Fiona was discussing in the second part of her presentation there. So again, we've tried to simplify this slightly this year. There is these plus minus buttons at the bottom, which you can again add as many items as you like. I've used some of the more common examples here. I've used Marty, I've used Sphero, I've used Lego Spike Essential. I put batteries in for microbits, which is something Fiona mentioned there. I know every school got at least 20 microbits this year, but I'm not sure, batteries aren't cheap. So, I've put that in there. And as Fiona mentioned, rechargeable with a recharger. Not a bad shout either. I've put training sessions in there, field trips. Fiona mentioned supply teachers. So those are all examples of what you can put in there. I know some schools don't have to pay VAT. So if you don't have to pay VAT, please don't include it. If you do need to pay VAT, let's say you're not a school, please do include VAT. We can't add anything. This should be the total cost of what you as an organization or school is going to have to put out. We can't increase the grant once it has been agreed with you, even if there's been a mistake. Now, what Fiona mentioned there, those, for example, they managed to save some money on some purchases along the way, and that's great. That won't actually reduce the grant. What we'll do is we'll work with you and see if maybe we can find something within the amount that you have been promised to. So, Fiona was able to buy a Marty, but we can't increase it. So, for example, I asked for 4,000 in my mock application here. I would not be able to come back to Digital Xtra Fund, in December and say, actually, can you make it 4,500? Unfortunately, we're not able to do that. In fact, if you add all this up, and unfortunately, it doesn't do it automatically, because when you have multiple rows, it doesn't allow us to put a formula in here. So you do have to manually add these and type it in here. It pulls this manually from that first page when it said how much you were going to ask for. So you'll see here right now, it has said that I've only asked for 4,000, but what my total project cost is 4,500. So I'm negative 500, and that's calculated automatically. Ideally, you want this to be 0. You can't ask for more than what you need. So it can't be a positive, because that means you're asking for more than you need. If it's a negative, then we used to have a whole section here where you had to enter some numbers. We've just pulled all that out because it was too complicated. And we've just said, how are you going to afford the whatever additional costs that the grant is not covering. I think Fiona mentioned there that they've got some additional funding there from Aberdeen Science Centre, for example. So I've put in there, although I've just realized I forgot a 0, but I've just put in it's 500. Yeah, the outstanding £500 has already been confirmed as a donation from our local Tesco via their Bags for Life Blue Chip Community Program. That is just an example out of other projects that we have been working with this year where they have done exactly that. We've also had donations from parents associations. We've had schools covering, if it's only like £50, we've had schools covering out of budgets. PEF funding is another common way to afford it. If you need, say, 5,500, you can only apply for up to 5,000. That extra 500 has to come from somewhere. So in this case, I only asked for 4,000 because we already had the 500 from Tesco, just, as an example. So hopefully that's pretty straightforward, but if you do have any questions, please get in touch. There is also a link up here for the sample budget. So the same thing as what we did with the project plan. There is a sample budget here, again, generic. I made this one up, actually. This isn't from a project, but this is just generic stuff that is common in many applications that we receive. The project plan and the budget are probably the two most challenging questions, if you will. So hopefully after that you find it easier, but the rest you do need to think a little bit more maybe. So this is core objective. It's pretty straightforward. In your own words, how does your project achieve the core objective of Digital Xtra Fund, which is to inspire young people to learn digital technology skills through high quality, exciting extracurricular activities, thus expanding the talent pipeline of young people who study technology related disciplines and ultimately pursue a career in digital technologies. I didn't write that, I inherited it. But if you can describe how your project would achieve that, it would be that's basically what you need to do here. I see a question there quickly. When are the forms due? 6th of April, the day before Good Friday, is the due date for these. Sorry,
Craig, just quickly, there is a question in the chat saying, Lisa has noticed most of their funding projects are in the previous round have been schools. Does this reflect the application received, or are third-party organization less likely to receive funding? I was going to type in, but maybe you can.
No,
elaborate.
I missed it because the screen moved up, but thank you for highlighting that. And good question, Lisa. I would say that over the past 6 years, which is how long we've been doing this, the proportion of schools to non-schools has increased. Actually, when we first started, there was a much more equal balance. And if anything, it was maybe slightly towards non-schools. I would suggest that what you're noticing there is because of the ratio of applications we are now receiving from schools to non-schools. We do tend to receive more applications now from schools than we did at the beginning. So targets and outcomes is certainly the first part of it is just numbers. So, you know, I mentioned there's going to be 4 8-week cohorts in my mock project, and we're going to have about 20 people in the code club at a time, which is we usually see sort of between, let's say, 15 to 25 people in a code club at a time. So times that by 4, and I got my 80 people. Could the proposed initiative be delivered by the main applicant in a different local authority? Kind of relates to Lisa's question. If you're a school, the answer is probably no, because obviously you're geographically restricted to where your participants live, because that's the nature of a school. If you're a third-party organization, you might have more flexibility to deliver it in other parts of Scotland, and it may or may not be the case, but we could potentially ask you to do that if we have a lot of applications for one specific area. Ages, so this has changed. We used to just have ELC, primary, and secondary. We have aligned this slightly more with the curriculum for excellence, which actually reflects that point again, that most of our applications are coming from primary schools, particular primary schools. We'd love to see more from secondary. We have still put the ages in there because obviously we want to be able for anyone to apply. The reason we've done this is we do find that through speaking with schools, it tends to be mostly P5 to P7 who's involved with code clubs, but we didn't have any sort of hard data that said that. And so we were doing this to try and really nail down who is taking part in a coding or tech club. And, you know, is there something that we can do? Like I said, we'd love to see more applications from secondary schools, or should we maybe change some of our wording to be more inclusive to say early learning? But at the moment, it's the first year we've done that. So if you're not a school, it maybe is a little bit more better to go by the ages versus the phases, but or levels. But that's where we've done that. So I've put here, for example, there'll be 60 in approximately P5 to P7 and 20 in P2 to P4. Gender. Now I'll explain below why, but I've put 75% female and 25% male. And you want this calculated automatically, but it should obviously equal 100. So under key audiences, I have said, does the initiative proactively target areas of high deprivation? We have 3 key audiences that we like to target with the grant awards. It doesn't mean you have to target one of these areas, but I will say that in the scoring methodology, that 0 to 4 that I explained earlier, if you are able to target one or more of these audiences, you have a better chance of receiving a 3 or a 4. If you don't target one of these audiences, for this particular question, you probably would get a 2 or 1 or a 0. So for this, again, this mock project, I'm not going to be targeting areas of high deprivation. However, I am going to be targeting areas of rural isolation. And in the guidelines, there is definitions for what is considered a high deprived area, what is considered a rural or remote area, and what will we be targeting groups underrepresented in the digital tech, i.e. girls and young women or minorities. So I've explained here 2 of the 4 cohorts are going to be all girls. So that's where I got that 75% of my attendees will be female up above. Again, I'm just making this up, but that is a common feature that we see in many applications. Maha, have I missed any questions?
Yeah, just quickly, David is asking, could this be a joint submission for a school and a college as part of school-college partnership?
I'm not familiar with if school college partnership is like a specific program or not, but absolutely it could be. We've supported New College Lanarkshire, West College Scotland, Edinburgh College, and because obviously the target audience has to be aged young, 16 and under, typically it's through a college school partnership. So I'm not sure if that's a formal thing that I'm maybe not aware of, or you just mean a school college partnership in general, but yes, absolutely. Any other questions, Maha?
No, not at the moment.
So engagement is slightly different this year. Again, not a whole lot. What you may have noticed, again, if you filled this in before, is we used to have a question about secondary objectives. How does the proposed activity address the secondary objectives of Digital Xtra Fund? We've removed that question completely this year, and there's 5 secondary objectives. We've incorporated them into various other questions because we felt there was a lot of repetition before, and this allows the person completing it to maybe tell a bit more of a story versus just reiterating the same things over and over again. So, you know, we do find that getting young people engaged in digital tech, particularly older young people, is a challenge. And this is not something that's new probably to any of you, but we'd like you to talk here how you're going to get young people interested in your activity and how you're going to inspire them to continue attending. So guest speakers, examples of possible careers, presenting digital skills in a fun, relevant manner, tech for good. Fiona mentioned there the UN sustainability goals, something that's really relevant in a lot of schools, but also can be a lot of fun to do things that are tech related around those. Ethics and tech in the community, young STEM leaders, all girls cohorts. The young STEM leaders, I'll pull that one out before I move on. If you can get, say, older pupils who maybe have confidence or ability with digital tech to be digital leaders within your school, that can help inspire maybe or encourage some of those who are maybe less confident with digital tech to take part, particularly if those older pupils are female and they can inspire and encourage some of the younger females to take part. Again, these are examples I'm pulling from previous activities. But if you're doing that, the Young STEM Leader Program out of CERC actually can get accreditation for those digital leaders, which is an excellent way for them to start building their skill sets and their CV. Now, one of the secondary objectives is how do we reduce negative stereotypes around digital tech? Maybe it's changed slightly in recent times, but certainly when I was younger, a career or a job or an interest in digital tech immediately was considered negative and labeled you a nerd, and you were considered to be stuck in the basement in a windowless room working on giant machines. I'd like to think that that's moved on, but I think there's still elements of that, and so this answer in particular is to address that secondary objective and how you're going to dispel some of those negative stereotypes. I'm aware of time, so I'm going to move on, but Maha, before I do, is there any questions there?
Yep. So Mr. Henderson says if his school has more than one idea, and so would they complete 2 separate applications, or should be just to submit one with both?
You should absolutely submit 2 separate applications, and you are allowed to do that. We may or may not fund both because obviously we want to be able to ensure that the funding can be delivered as widely as possible, but we will look at the rank order, and the one that would be scored better, if you will, would be successful. I would not put them together because that gets confusing and usually in terms of an application muddles the message. There has been one time that we actually funded the same organization twice in a year, so it can happen, but it's not as common. Typically, we would look to try and fund the application which is scored higher. Any other questions, Maha?
Yeah, so Ms. Collins is asking, she is a STEM development officer in a local authority and would like to team up with the digital development officer for a project, so focusing on either 1 or 2 schools in the local authority. Is this something which would be permitted?
Not only permitted, it would be encouraged. Collaboration between schools or between, as I said earlier, schools and colleges or schools and the local authority, basically any sort of collaboration, schools and local industry, community clubs and local industry, any sort of collaboration is definitely encouraged.
Yep. And Mrs. Wilkinson, your question, how many applications we received? So we received in total 94, out of which 35 have been funded for last year. So of 94, 35 were successful.
Yeah, thank you, Maha. So the next question, there's 10 questions altogether, by the way. We're on 8, so we're not doing too bad in terms of time. But the next question is contextualizing skills. I would say this is the question that we tweak slightly the most each year, because it is maybe the third most difficult after project plan and budget to answer. And so we've actually broken it out this year to try and make it more black and white. So what are the digital skills that you will be covering, and what are the meta skills? And if you're not familiar with meta skills, just Google meta skills, Skills Development Scotland, and we have actually in the guidelines pulled a small description and a small graph, but it's more commonly probably known as soft skills, but it's your creativity, communication, teamwork, resilience, all those types of skills, which are, it's funny when you talk to industry, although they want them to have a confidence and a basic understanding of digital tech, once they have that, it's the meta skills that actually probably are more important, that ability to work as a team, to learn new skills, particularly in an ever-changing industry. So we want young people to realize, especially resilience as well. We want young people to realize that, it's not a bad thing to fail. If anything, it's a good fit thing, because it teaches you something. We want them to be able to work as a team, because that stereotype of working by yourself on a machine in the basement is completely false. Teamwork is massive in the digital tech sector. So, and again, industry involvement is a great way to highlight that, which brings me on to 8B, engaging industry. Now, this is challenging for some, more challenging for some organizations or schools than others. I'm not oblivious to that. But if there's one silver lining from COVID, perhaps it's that the idea of engaging remotely with other people in another part of the world is not such a bad thing anymore. In fact, it's quite common. So we would love to see engagement either in person or remotely with industry, again, to highlight some of those elements that I talked about earlier, or to discuss how the digital skills that you're learning are relevant. What does Lego Spike or the Meowbot, what does that have to do with real life? What does a Sphero Bolt have to do with real life? And suddenly you start talking about autonomous vehicles or drones. And I didn't actually know that, Fiona, that you guys were looking at how robotics is being used in agriculture. That's amazing to hear that, because that is connecting, especially in a rural area, that is immediately connecting the skills to real life. A lot of what is happening in the agriculture sector right now is improvements through tech-based initiatives. So really, really interesting to hear that. But these are, again, just some of the, DYW, SDS has their marketplace, speakers for schools or founders for schools, Digital Xtra Fund. We have loads of industry partners, and many of them are keen to get involved. So some particularly like CGI, for example, very, very active. 4J Studios, an amazing games design company based in East Lothian and Dundee. They are super keen to get involved. So it might be an opportunity there. Probably not surprisingly, one of the more popular activities that we supported that gets volunteers is First Lego League, and they're always looking for judges and referees. So if you're looking at doing a Lego-based activity for your extracurricular club, maybe look into First Lego League, which is ran out of ESP in Stirling and IET across the UK, but it's in Scotland. It's managed by ESP. And maybe there's an opportunity for local industry or parents, the parent body. I should have put that in here. How many parents are in the parent body might be working in digital tech. So lots of opportunities for engaging industry there. Maha, is there any questions I should mention?
Sorry, I'm just trying to clarify Mr. Henderson's question. He mentioned that one of the idea they are having at the school is coding club for pupils and a parent digital skills workshop run by a local college. So I was just trying to clarify that if it's just the parent workshop, it won't qualify, it won't be eligible because it's 16 and over. So that's what I was going to clarify there.
Yeah, I mean, just to sort of answer it as a umbrella answer, Maha's right. If it's specifically for parents, even though there will be a benefit to young people, the activity, regardless of what you're doing, the activity has to directly engage with young people 16 and under. Another thing, that relates to that, for example, is CPD or CLPL. You can include CPD, CLPL in your budget, but it has to directly relate to the engagement with young people. The end product can't be the upskilling of teachers or educators. That has to be a means to the ends of engaging young people. Where there might be an opportunity there, Mr. Henderson, is we do have projects that do family learning, where parents and guardians are invited to, and carers are invited to take part in the Code Club along with their child or young person, and that is absolutely something that we would be able to support. We have supported, in fact. So I'm going to go on to question 9. It starts to get easier from here. Evaluation. So, I mean, Fiona showed you some of the evaluations she's done there. I'll be honest with you, that is some of the more in-depth evaluation that I've seen, but that is not necessarily a bad thing. What we really want to see, though, is ideally some pre and post evaluation. So what is their confidence? What is their comfort? What is their knowledge of digital tech before versus after? You can measure that with word clouds. You can measure that with how many careers in the tech industry can you list. You can measure it with a survey. You can measure it with emojis if they're younger. There's lots of different ways that we've seen do it. Surveys is probably the most common. You can do it as a discussion and then write about it as the facilitator, what was discussed. We just, we're not looking for a long-term study here on the attitudes of young people, even though that is sort of what the core objective implies. What we are really just wanting to see is that during that delivery period, that 12 or so months, that young people had a positive experience with tech and came out of it more interested in doing something with tech. And if you can demonstrate that, then it's considered a success. I'm going to move on to question 10, and then we can answer any other questions. So the last one is sustainability. And again, Fiona mentioned on this, there's no point in really us funding something that's only going to last 1 year. So we really want there to be some thought put into how will the project be sustained. Now, the obvious one is that once the kit is in place, it can be reused year after year. But obviously, training for staff, if staff move on, who will be able to take on? The obvious answer is to maybe get other staff involved and get them trained, or have an active young STEM leader program where, if I use, primary school, for example, P7s and P6s are the young STEM leaders. As the P7s move on, the P6s become the new digital leaders, but you have to recruit more. So they help recruit more P6s and so on and so forth. If all your digital leaders are P7s and they all leave, then, where are you at? So, involvement in other staff, maintenance of equipment, you'll need to consider, things break, it happens, things get lost. How are you going to maintain that equipment? And I've put support of SLT senior leadership team in there as well. I would, I don't know what it's like in your school, but I would suggest that the most successful code clubs that we support have the full support of the senior leadership team and are not just one passionate teacher, because let's be honest, I'll be frank, passion can only take you so far. So you need support from your colleagues and you need support from your senior leadership team. It's not to say that one passionate person can't pull it off, they can, but the most successful ones that we see have a multi level support, whether that, again, is from all the way from the senior leadership team down to pupils and digital leaders. So that is the end of the question. They're at the end of the application, excuse me. There are some questions about GDPR. Do you want to join our mailing list? Do you understand the terms and conditions? Have you read the guidelines? Plus parents, absolutely. Thank you, Fiona. But I don't need to go through that. So in the 2 minutes left, I will say as well, if there's any questions that you don't want to type into the chat, and there is no stupid questions. I know that sounds cliche, but it's true. But if there's any questions that you don't want to put in the chat, or you think about after we finish up here, please email us at info@digitalxtrafund.scot. That's extra spelled with an X. You don't, if you don't remember that, you can go to our website. You can contact us on a contact form there. So that's probably it. And I see some people saying thank you. Thank you very much for joining us. But before we go, I think there's a question there. Maha, is that correct?
Yeah, so Lisa's asking, how would we connect with them, with our partners prior to applying, or is the potential for their engagement more hypothetical for the application?
So there's sort of two facets to that. One, if you are connecting with industry or trade bodies or local authorities. You know, the NHS is one of the biggest employers in Scotland, and health tech is massive right now. Any of that you can do before the application, or like I said, you know, in the project plan, maybe you just put a slot in there that says guest speaker, sort of TBC. You know, the other thing about the project plan, you know, Maha and I completely understand things happen and things change. Things happen and things change all the time. You know, I know as a teacher, sometimes it's scary to put something down. And I say teacher, even though it could be anyone, but I know speaking to teachers, it's scary sometimes to put things down on paper because you think you're going to be held to it. We are very flexible. Things happen. We just need to know that there has been thought put into this. In terms of our specific partners, there is a whole process that I don't want to get into right now because it's too much, but Maha has some wonderful forms. We have an online list of activities that our partners can access and see what's available, the PDFs that they can download and circulate amongst their staff. So we can help you arrange those after, particularly if we know there's a slot in the project plan where that's applicable, and even better if we have a particular topic that they can maybe discuss in that slot or whatever. You know, last year there was another school up in Angus. They had a games designer, a cybersecurity, a space tech talk, and I can't remember the fourth one, but they were all sort of arranged as you go along.
Craig, I was also thinking if you want to quickly show the save and continue thing on the forum. Thank
you. Yes, there is a save and continue button on the bottom. I just realized I'm still sharing, but that's okay. There's a save and continue button at the bottom here. It will ask you to, it'll give you a URL, which you can copy and paste, which is helpful, but you can also enter your email address and it will send you that in an email. Obvious thing with that is please ensure you enter the correct email address, and also check your spam or junk folder afterwards because it may get sent there. But the safest way is to just copy and paste that link into like a Word doc or whatever. And then you can come back to it from any computer and it will take you straight back to where you last click the next button.
And it expires in 30 days, so make sure you come before the 30th day.
Thank you. Yes, that's important.
But
if you use the offline form,
yeah.
None of that really matters if you lose it. But yes, Maha's right.
So Mrs. Mortimer is asking if there was a guest speaker. Is that just the children involved in the extracurricular club who can attend, or could it be a wider school benefit? It would be we would highly recommend it be a wider.
Yeah, anyone can attend. Yeah. I guess what I didn't talk about in the budget, and again, I apologize, we just sort of ran a bit short on time there, but the primary audience has to be young people 16 and under, but anyone can take part, whether that's families or the wider school audience. I think what's important there, was particular to the budget, is anything you're asking for in terms of funding has to be for young people 16 and under. So, you know, if it was, say, can't think of an example offhand, but yeah, you just have to, anyone can take part, but as long as the funding is specifically for young people, then that's okay.
And as I mentioned before, we will have this recording so you can refer back to it. It will be on our YouTube channel as well, but feel free to drop us an email if you want. We are also doing another webinar in March, so if you have any questions then, if you have looked at the application by then and if you want to join again, there is another webinar we are doing in March. We are also planning to deliver some in-person events, mainly in Aberdeen, Dundee, Glasgow and Edinburgh. So if you would like to come along for those in-person sessions, we will bring in some of our toys, some of those educational kits, which Fiona mentioned and Kraig mentioned as well. So maybe you get to play with them and see if that's something suitable for your cohort, for your setting. So please feel free to come along. They are still TBC. We will be shortly putting them up, the dates and everything and the venues on our website and also on our social media. So please feel free to follow us on our Twitter, which is the most popular one. We post a lot on it. So please follow us on Twitter. So we will be posting the updates there for sure, but also on our website on the apply page. So please keep an eye out for those dates and venues. Anything else? I can't remember anything else.
I think we're running out of time. So anything else will have to wait for an email. But thank you very much all for attending today. Really, really great to see so much interest in the fund. And we look forward to reading all your wonderful ideas.
Thanks, Fiona, for joining, and thanks everyone.
Yes, thank you, Fiona, as well.
I'll stop the recording now.
Brilliant.